Today in the Fast Lane Classics, we are telling the tale once again of why you should never buy the cheapest version of anything, why you should just buy the best one you can, and if you can't afford the best one, maybe don't buy one at all, because behind us is our cheap 1987 Porsche 911. It just got back from the shop after being there for about 3 weeks. Nothing has been fixed. We are $2,600 poorer, and it's still a mess. So in this video, we're going to tell you the story. Right, so here's the backstory. We bought this 911 for $35,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but if you're familiar with air-cooled Porsches, especially late 80s air-cooled Porsches like this 87, then you know that they're really desirable, especially when they're rust-free like this one and have a clean title and run and drive and all that. But we did know it had a few issues, and the first issue was the top. Now, we bought this vehicle with the top down, and we didn't put it up. The owner said it had some issues. So he said when you went to put it up, it had a hard time latching in place, and that the zipper was broken. And sure enough, when we tried to put it up, the zipper is broken for the rear window because you could unzip it. But it turns out there's a lot more broken than that. So the local shop we took it to discovered that on this side, the top mounting mechanism that secures it to the body of the Porsche has broken free. The welds have broken free, and they said that's going to need a body shop to re-weld it. But even more basic than that, the whole mechanism is all boogered up, and in fact on that side it is snapped completely in half, and it's a disaster, and the whole thing is bent and out of whack. And we went to put it up once and it kind of worked, and then this motor stopped working. I mean, the whole top just needs like to be gone and redone, and that's going to be really expensive. I think that's probably going to be well into the mid $5,000 range, probably more. That's just seat of a pants guess, but yeah, it's going to be really expensive, which is a shame because the actual top material is in really nice shape, and if we put a new zipper on the window, it just, the little zipper part fell off. I think we could probably save it, but because it's all physically, you know, mangled up over there, it's going to be a hard thing to get working. But that's not the worst of the problems. Now, the bigger issue with this 911 reared its ugly head about a week after we bought it, and it has to do with the engine. Now, we picked it up, it ran really nicely, it passed emissions no problem, which is a good sign. That means that there's probably not a big oil burning issue, and it seems to go through the rev range pretty well. But as it started to warm up here in Colorado, and we took it out on some nice days, it had this random cutout issue. So you'd be driving along and then the engine would just randomly die. Now the vehicle would still have power, so you'd still have lights and horns and turn signal and stuff, but it would be like a hard cut. I mean, you'd be driving along 3,000 RPM and then straight to zero, which is a pretty annoying thing. Usually you just turn it off and it'll start up first crank. Sometimes it took a few tries. Now, if you know these 911s, maybe you could help us out here a little bit, because one of the common issues is this little relay that lives underneath the seat. I threw a new one in there. That is a big issue of these old 911s. That didn't fix it. Now the shop we took it to went ahead and really kind of started to dive into it and looked at the fuel injection, and here's what they replaced. Now the nice gentleman working on this vehicle dove into the forums and the service bulletins and found that it could be a sensor issue with the fuel injection, so he replaced the oil temp sensor and the crankshaft sensor as well. Both of those came to $1,316.26. We're not really sure if it fixed it. He said he took it out once and the engine cut, but then my dad drove it around twice and it was fine. It was like it's such an intermittent thing, which is what makes it so frustrating. But I think what we're going to do next, I've got some friends, Heidi and Franny. They've got a really great YouTube channel, and they really know these older 80s 911 inside and out. She actually just went ahead and did a full engine refresh on her, so I think I'm going to bring it to them and have them kind of see what they can figure out. Now, these older cars are a little bit tricky because, right, it's pre-95 or 96, there's no OBD per se. There are some tricks that you can do to see what's going on with the brain, but it could be like a solder issue with the computer is a potential I read on the forum. But once again, I'm not a mechanic by any stretch of the imagination. When it runs quite nicely. It's just that you'll be cruising along and every now and then it'll stop altogether. So that'll take some more investigating, I fear. So the guys at the shop we were using to start diving into this car were really nice, and they seem to be pretty good, but we really want to take this car to a Porsche specialist who like just really understands the intricacies of the electrical system and that kind of thing. So we'll bring it to Heidi and Franny, see if they want to help us take on this project, and then see if they have any recommendations on who can do like the top, for example. So we're really looking for like the true old air-cooled Porsche dudes and gals who can make it happen. Now the interior is pretty clean, and you can see that the engine starts up first try pretty much every time, and when it's running, it runs nicely. Now, stuff that doesn't work on the interior, well, the steering wheel's terrible. This looks like a PS2 steering wheel from an arcade from 1999. This is going to have to be changed. Now, what the steering wheel is connected to, the wheels, also didn't perform very well. We actually had to shop replace the front struts because they were leaking quite badly, and then they performed a $200 alignment on it as well, just to clean up the steering a little bit. But you can see that all the gauges work, except for the clock. I don't think the clock works, but the speedometer works, odometer, 95,000 miles, that works. The tach, that's all good. We've got strong oil pressure. The oil temperature never gets too hot. The oil level is good, and the gas gauge works, as well as the dummy lights for the oil pressure and the charging. So like that's all good, and it all seems to work pretty well. In terms of climate control, the heater does work. I'm not really sure if the little vent flaps work, but heater works. AC definitely does not work. The Kenwood radio is terrible. That does work out of one speaker. And then another interesting issue is up here. The brake warning. So the pad warning you can see is on the dash there, but we had the brakes looked at and they're in really good condition. So I wonder if there's some kind of wiring issue there that's causing the brake pad warning light to come on. But pads are good. Moving down here, hazards work. No idea if the heated mirrors work. The AC is dead, but power locks work like a dream. Transmission is good as well. So this is the G50. It is a 5-speed. The previous owner just put a new clutch in it, and it shifts through the gears quite nicely. Parking brake is all good, and then these are like the defrost levers. Those kick on a little fan. So overall, the interior is not bad. There are a crack or two in the dashboard up there. The seats are looking a little tired, and the carpet is very Miami Vice. I'm pretty sure someone's had the carpet redone in this, but apart from that, it could be worse. Now in the front of the Porsche, first of all, notice that we did the front trunk struts. Those are working like a dream. Accomplished something all by ourselves. But in all seriousness, it does look pretty good. Now this color is not original to the car. There's a way that you can actually run the VIN with various websites and spit out the option codes, which typically would be on a sticker underneath the hood here. But this car has been repainted into this dark blue. I will say they did a pretty good job, and they did paint it absolutely everywhere. You would have no idea that this was not dark blue originally if it weren't for some of like the orange peel under the hood and that kind of thing. There's one area way in the back underneath some trim where you can see that this car was originally like this kind of light blue. It was almost like a silver. So that is an interesting thing as well. Eddie Bauer jumper cables. Look at that. How bougie is that? Pretty wild. Now other stuff that's wrong in the front. So we did the front struts. The rear struts were fine. Those look to be in good shape. But here is kind of the scariest part of this whole car. And this is what could be contributing to our engine cutout issue. That little guy right there, that is an alarm system that has been wired in, I assume sometime in the 80s or 90s. And it is a hell of a complicated system. At least that's what I've been told. I mean, it's just a spaghetti of wires that is spliced into the car's brain. This is going to need to come out somehow. So someone is going to have to take that out. At probably a great expense to us, but that could be all of our electrical issues in one little box right there, because I mean it's integrated into the car in a lot of different functions like the ignition, and that could be what's causing that cutout problem. It could also be causing this. You can see the previous owner had installed a battery cutout at some point for a slight parasitic drain. The car has been sitting for 5-6 days and it doesn't seem to have an issue, but apparently if you let it sit for a long time, that will be an issue. And then you've got like this stuff, like that does not, none of this looks very factory. You know what I mean? It's all just a little bit sketchy. And oof, horrible, right? It's crazy that they use these type of fuses even in the 1980s. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, it's a good good car in a lot of ways. It's rust-free. I don't think it's been in an accident. Clean title. The engine, when it runs, really pulls strong. The brakes feel good. The steering is better since we did the alignment in the front struts. It just like it needs to really be overhauled in a lot of big ways. Now, some kind of interesting things that we've been diving into a little bit. The wide body kit. The VIN does not have the wide body kit listed as an option, although when you start diving into it a little bit, Porsche had this special wishes program that they can still do today, and we've read that potentially this is actually a factory kit from like a slant nose. You know, the really valuable race cars, they use this style of venting. And the reason we say that is because it is very, very well integrated into the car, and it is all steel, right? So it's none of that's fiberglass. So this could have been at least left the factory through the Special Wishes program as a wide body. Wheels are terrible. I think they're off of like a 964 or 993 maybe. Those are going to have to go. This would have had Fuchs on it originally. But yeah, that's where we're at. So $2,600. Now, maybe the fuel injection problem is fixed to cut out with the sensors. Hopefully. I'm a little skeptical. The top is going to be a major repair. Wheels are very expensive if you want original Fuchs. Super expensive. I'd like to take it back to the original color, which I'll show you here in a sec, but I think that's just going to be a big expense. Luckily, we're only in it for $37,000 now. It still is a cool looking, original-ish Porsche 911 that's always going to retain some value. So we're just going to keep dumping money into it and see what it's going to take to bring it up to a driver status that you can be comfortable hopping in and taking a 500-600 mile road trip in. Let us know what you think and if you can help us at all with some of our peculiar issues in the comment section below. And as always, this has been Tommy with the Fastlane Classics. Check out tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new vehicle reviews.